Okay, so we took a short 1 minute break, and now we're back, and we're going to actually style these elements here. So the question we had over the break was, what are these things here? They don't match up any of the files inside of our file list. Like, these are, none of our resources are called that, none of that. All they are, as a reminder for you guys, is names for the boxes themselves. So that way you can find the boxes later, and also if you just see tons and tons and tons and tons of div tags, you can click on it and find out what that div tag is for, or what that box does, or what you intend for it to do. So that's actually all you need to know for that. Now, for the styling, there's a couple different things that we can do, and I don't want to make it too, let's see if we can pull that open. I don't want to make it too confusing, but there's a few things we need to tell these boxes to do. One, we probably need to tell this text box how wide to be, because it's super long and all the text is taking forever. And two, we need to tell it to float next to this box. That's what the float property does. And then three, we need to tell them to not be right on the edge, to have some kind of spacing around them, like bumper pads. Like, this is like the bubble wrap around the boxes. You actually have padding, which is the bubble wrap inside the boxes, and then you can have spacing, which is bubble wrap outside the boxes. So let's go look at our code over here and see what I have written for that. So you can see I've defined a height and width, and I've also added margin, which is the outside spacing. Those are the bumper pads on the outside of the box. And then the float property says, hey, you're allowed to have things next to you on this side, or hey, float from this side. So let's actually copy that out. So our welcome image, we're actually going to do that. It's 400 by 350 tall. So let's actually start that rule. So outside of our previous rule, we're going to do the hashtag method this time. So hashtag, and then welcome image, welcome, and you can see it already knows what it's looking for, welcome image. Oops, sorry, I scrolled past there. Curly Q bracket, close curly Q bracket, and then hit enter to open it up. So height, colon, what did we have here? Height is 400 pixels. Width is 350 pixels, I believe. All right, so nothing's going to change yet because that's the same size as the image already is. Now we need to add some margin. So let's see what happens when we do that. So if we start typing margin, so like margins of the paper, you'll see we have a couple options. We have margin, which will go all the way around, margin bottom, margin left, margin right, and margin top. So pretty easy. We can actually, let's try just adding margin all the way around and see what happens. So if we do margin and then hit 50 pixels, you can see that our image moved a little bit. What it's doing is it's adding spacing all around it. Doesn't look like it's wanting to do it from the top, but I'll show you what happened kind of with that. It's adding spacing, open up this little window here, around the box. You can see it pushed the text, it pushed to the edge here, and it pushed over there. So it looks like what it's also doing is you can see sometimes things break down in unexpected ways. So the margin on the top is actually pushing the whole div box down. And the reason that probably is because this box has only a certain amount of height, so it's kind of like shoving its bumpers out past, which can be really confusing. But once we get to the other part, it should fix it, so don't panic yet. Let's go do our next styling for this text box and get that guy out of the way so that it won't be bumping into the other one. And then we'll add our float properties at the end and see if those solve some of our problems. So new rule, hashtag, welcome, and this time text, curly Q bracket, hit enter to open that up, and now let's copy what we have here. So we want the welcome text to be 400 by 425 height and width. So height equals 400 pixels, width equals 425, and you can see I didn't put my pixels there. It's important you actually put your like identifiers like that. So height, colon, 400 pixels, semicolon, width, colon, 425 pixels, semicolon. And then we can see that's probably going to cause all kinds of weird stuff to happen there. You can see it's jumping out of the box because it's overflowing. There's not enough room for it at the moment. So we'll do that. Let's check and see if there's any margin. Let's give it 50 pixels of margin just like the other one. It's going to panic for a second, but don't worry. So I'm actually just going to copy that, paste that right there. We now have some margin around it. And all we have to do now is tell these objects to float next to each other. So to do that, we tell the welcome image to float left. What that means is objects can hang out to the right of it because it's floating on the left of whatever's next. And then we tell the other one to float right. So float to the right of whatever you're next to. So very easy, you just type in float left. And then we tell this one float right. And bam, instant solution to our problem. And you can see that actually did solve our problem with it pushing out of the box. And that's simply because the objects inside were bigger than the box, so they were busting the edges of the other box open. So very, very simple. That's all we needed to do. Let's save it and preview it in the browser because I know it's hard to see. So this is where we were before. Double-click index, and this is where we are now. And that's literally all you have to get to by the end of class. But I'm going to take you one step farther because I think if I give you guys 45 minutes to an hour to do that, you'll be able to do it and we'll still have time to then style the text. So I know in your book you learned about paragraph tags and header tags, and those are just like headings, hierarchies or whatever you can add to your text to make them look certain ways. So we're going to adjust our paragraph tag so that we can style this text to look more attractive, to make it like a little bit wider, maybe change the color or something like that, make it bigger, whatever we want to do. But that was the simple kind of thing here. So let's look at the code really fast one more time and let's compare it to my other sample. The only differences here is instead of, in this case I said 50 margin all the way around. In this case I said only have 50 margin on top, have 90 margin on your right, and on this one I said only have 50 margin on top, have 90 margin to your left. That's all that is. So something to keep in mind is there's something, it's called box model or box math, and I will explain that to you probably in another video, but there's some kind of confusing elements in this when you get too crazy with it, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Essentially, if I add bubble wrap inside of this box, it's going to make the whole box bigger. It's not just going to, let's say you have a 100 pixel box, if I add 50 pixels of bubble wrap inside, it's now a 150 pixel box, not a 100 pixel box with 50 pixels of bubble wrap. It's sort of a very, very weird kind of thing, but I think your chapter book will eventually get to it and hopefully explain it a little bit better, but I just did want to mention that. So just stick with the simple measurements that I've given you for this so that you know it will work properly. But there we go. So we have our welcome section, our welcome image, and our welcome text boxes, along with 3 new rules, one for our welcome section, one for our welcome image, and one for our welcome text that are named the same thing as the boxes with the same punctuation, capital, lowercase, etc. And that is all you need to be able to achieve by the end of class today.